Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to our session today. Today we will be discussing a very important chapter, and the chapter is called Conditionals. So we learned all the verb tenses yesterday, and right after verb tenses, if there is a chapter that you must learn and that you must go through, then that chapter has to be, or the chapter is definitely conditionals. So let's get going and see what we have. So, what are conditionals? Conditional sentences are statements discussing known factors or hypothetical situations and their consequences. Complete conditional sentences contain a conditional clause, often referred to as the if clause, and the consequence. Consider the following sentences. If a certain condition is true, then a particular result happens. I would travel around the world if I won the lottery. When water reaches 100 degrees, it boils, right? So I think you can derive a little bit from the title of the chapter, which is conditionals, that the chapter is all about conditions. Or how do we talk about conditions when it comes to English grammar, right? So we employ these conditionals, or we talk in the conditional mood when we want to talk about a situation that has a condition in it. So conditional sentences or statements, they discuss known factors. They talk about general truths or certain matters or issues or factors that are known to everyone, or some other situations that might occur had something else occurred. Okay? Also, we discuss the consequences if any of the conditions that we're discussing materialized. Okay? Well, I may not be making much sense now, but looking into the examples and moving forward today, I am sure all of you will be clear. Okay, so take a look at these examples here. If a certain condition is true, then a particular result happens. I would travel around the world if I won the lottery. When water reaches 100 degrees, it boils. So you see, we have two sentences or two clauses in a conditional sentence. We have two clauses in a conditional sentence. One clause is the if clause, and the other clause is the main clause. Now, take a look at the second example here. I would travel around the world if I won the lottery. So we've got two clauses here. The first clause is an independent clause and is the main clause of the sentence. And the following clause is the if clause. We call the following clause as the if clause, and also this if clause is a dependent clause. So I would travel around the world if I won the lottery. Okay, now moving forward to the next slide, we get to know that there are four different types of conditional sentences in English. Each expresses a different degree of probability that a situation will occur or would have occurred under certain circumstances. Try to follow this through once again. There are four different types of conditional sentences, in English. Each expresses a different degree of probability that a situation will occur if something else happens or would have occurred under certain circumstances. So there are four types of conditional sentences. The first type is zero conditional sentences. The second type is first conditional sentences. The third type is second conditional sentences. And the fourth type is third conditional sentences. Okay? Now, we will begin by looking at the zero conditional sentences. Let's read what we have here on the slide. How to use zero conditional sentences. Zero conditional sentences express general truths, matters or facts that are known to everyone and facts that are always true. Situations in which one thing always causes another. Follow this. Situations in which one thing always causes another, meaning one action is immediately followed by another. Okay. When you use a zero conditional, you're talking about a general truth rather than a specific instance of something. Consider the following examples. If you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. If you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. When people smoke cigarettes, their health suffers. When people smoke cigarettes, their health suffers. Now, these sentences here, or these two sentences here, are general facts, are general truths, right? They are known by everyone, and we all acknowledge this, that if we don't brush our teeth, we may get cavities, or we do get cavities. We get cavities. Okay. Now, when we smoke cigarettes, or if we smoke cigarettes on a regular basis, there is a very high chance that we will suffer, right? So when people smoke cigarettes, their health suffers. So these things or these facts are well known and are accepted as general truths by everyone, universally. So such sentences are known as or are identified as zero conditional sentences. Okay? There are a couple of things to take note of in the above sentences in which the zero conditional is used. First, when using the zero conditional, the correct tense to use in both clauses is the simple present tense. A common mistake is to use the simple future tense, such as, take a look at the incorrect example here. When people smoke cigarettes, their health will suffer. We cannot say this. We cannot say when people smoke cigarettes, their health will suffer. You see? Notice that the words if and when can be used interchangeably in these zero conditional sentences. This is because the outcome will always be the same, so it doesn't matter if or when it happens. So we employ, or when we talk about sentences, or we use the zero conditional sentence, or we use the zero conditional to talk about a situation that is always true. Okay? Such as, for example, if I say that if you boil, I'll get back to the previous slide and take a look at this sentence here. When water reaches 100 degrees, it boils. Now, this is a scientific fact. It's a general truth. It always happens. Whenever you boil water, or whenever the temperature reaches 100 degrees, the water, it boils, right? So these things are general truths. And in such general truths, what happens is both of the clauses are kept in the simple present tense, right? As you can see over here, both the clauses are kept in the simple present tense. Now, if you don't brush your teeth, this part of the sentence, this clause is in the simple present tense, and so is the following clause, which is the main clause. You get cavities. You don't brush your teeth. If you don't brush your teeth is the if clause, and the main clause is you get cavities. Both these clauses are in the simple present tense. When people smoke cigarettes, or people smoke cigarettes, so this if clause is in the simple present tense, and so is the main clause, which is their health suffers. When people smoke cigarettes, their health suffers. So whenever you want to whenever you want to describe or talk about something using the zero conditional, remember both your clauses must be in the simple present tense. The if clause and also the main clause. We discussed what the simple present tense is yesterday, and I hope all of you remember what the simple present tense is and how simple present tense, or under which circumstances we generally use simple present tense. So since these things are general truths, or things that happen every now and then, or things that are universally accepted as true, therefore, we are talking about these, we are describing these situations in the simple present tense, okay? Where both your if clause and the main clause are in the simple present tense, okay? Now, moving on, to the next slide, here we learn how do we use the first conditional sentences. Now, first conditional sentences are used to express situations in which the outcome is likely but not guaranteed to happen in the future. Look at the examples below. If you rest, you will feel better. If you rest, you will feel better. If you set your mind to a goal, you will eventually achieve it. Note that we use the simple present tense in the if clause and the simple future tense in the main clause. That is the clause that expresses the likely outcome. This is how we indicate that under a certain condition, as expressed in the if clause, a specific result will likely happen in the future. Now, we have just discussed the zero conditional sentences, right? Or how to use the zero conditional in sentences. So we only employ the zero conditional when we want to talk about truths or situations that are generally known to all and are universally accepted as true. So in those cases, we only use the simple present tense to talk about, or when we use the zero conditional, we basically put both our clauses in the simple present tense, the if clause and also the main clause. But when you want to talk about a situation that is likely to happen, right? That is likely to happen, meaning you think that if you do something, the consequence of your doing that will be something else. Now, the following consequence, or the consequence that you're expecting, may happen or may not happen, but the likeliness of that happening is quite high. The probability of the consequence that you're expecting is quite high. So to talk about such situations, we use the first conditional. And using the first conditional means your if clause will be in the simple present tense, and the consequence that you're expecting because of the condition must be spoken of or must be expressed in the simple future tense, such as if you rest, you will feel better. Follow this. If you rest, you will feel better. Or if I study hard, I will pass this exam. Follow that in the if clause, or the if clause is actually expressed in the simple present tense, right? If I study hard. If I study hard. So I study hard is in the simple present tense. Now the following clause, which is the main clause, where the consequence that I'm expecting of my studying hard is that I will pass the exam. So I will pass the exam. This part, or this particular clause, is in the simple future tense. You follow? So what conditional have we employed here in this sentence, or for this sentence? We are actually portraying the sentence using the first conditional. So we say, if I study hard, I will pass this exam. Or if you rest, you will feel better. If you set your mind to a goal, you will eventually achieve it. If you set your mind to a goal, you will eventually achieve it. Note that we use the simple present tense in the if clause and simple future tense in the main clause. That is the clause that expresses the likely outcome. This is how we indicate that under a certain condition, as expressed in the if clause, a specific result will likely happen in the future. Okay? I hope I'm clear. Now moving forward to the next slide. All right, we've got some remarks here. Let's go through them. Inzamuni says, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. How are you? Tasnia Rabi says, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam, Tasnia. Salahuddin Rana here is saying, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. Salahuddin, good evening, yes. Okay, Sultan Al-Arafat has something to say here. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Wa alaikum assalam. For the last couple of days, I have been receiving the old filled-up quiz, but no new ones. Please look into the matter. Okay, that is probably because you may have attempted these quizzes long ago. So if you already have, or if you did answer these if you did attempt these quizzes before, then it is quite probable that you will not be able to answer or take the quizzes again. So under such a circumstance, I would like you to be more patient, and I would also like to thank you for your patience. And yes, new quizzes are coming. They're coming your way, and when you have them, of course, you can take them again. You will be taking new quizzes. Okay. All right. Then we have Sanjida Kabir Sanju. Sorry. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam. I want a job in your company if it's possible. Okay. So right now we are only talk about our English skills, and we are here to refurbish our English skills. It's very good to know that you want to work for our company. That's excellent. For that purpose, what you have to do is you have to attend our sessions that are hosted by our HR. And if I'm not wrong, they host it every Saturday and Sunday. So stay tuned and keep an eye on our official Facebook page, and you will be informed more. Okay? All right. Sanjana Tarnum says, hello, sir. Hello to you too. Sanjana, I hope you're fine. Tasnia has a question, sir. Still now, I don't get 9 parts of speech part 1. I already checked my mail. Please send me if you consider. My email is tasnia.jahan3@gmail.com. Okay, Tasnia, your query is noted. I'll see if I can resend you the first part of the parts of speech quiz. Tasnim Bushra says, Assalamu alaikum, sir. Wa alaikum assalam. I hope you're fine, Tasnim. Faisal Bari has this question. Robert usually walks to school if he has enough time. Is that sentence correct for 0 conditionals? Okay, this is not really a conditional sentence over here. Wait. It is, but the way you have punctuated your sentences has actually made it quite confusing. You mean to say that Robert usually walks to school if he has enough time? Yeah, the question mark is bugging here. The question mark is incorrect. You should have ended it with a full stop. So you mean to say that Robert usually walks to school if he has enough time? Yeah, this is absolutely fine. And since this is a general action or something that happens again and again or happens often, so you can talk about this situation using the 0 conditional, which in this case you have. So Robert usually walks to school if he has enough time. Now, when you're actually writing the if clause after your main clause, you don't have to put a comma right after your main clause, because that is incorrect. Okay, like in here, I can see that you have put a comma right after your main clause. You only put the comma when you have written your if clause first. So you could write that if he has enough time, comma, Robert usually walks to school. If Robert has enough time, comma, he walks to school. But if you're going to say that if you want to mention the first clause or the main clause first, then you don't have to follow it with a comma. Why not? It's because we know that when we begin or when we write a sentence with an independent clause at first, it is not followed by a comma, given it is followed by a dependent clause. But if a dependent clause is put at first, then definitely the dependent clause must be followed by a comma, the dependent clause, not the independent clause. Okay? All right. So yes, this sentence of yours is correct as long as the 0 conditional goes, but it is incorrectly punctuated. So Robert usually walks to school if he has enough time. Yes, this sentence is good, and I can see that you've used the 0 conditional for it correctly. Okay, Ninja Moni says, need to repeat first conditional sentence when I can understand it's a first conditional, or what is the situation to known first conditionals? Okay, all right. Like I was saying, I will repeat once again for you. So we use the first conditional to talk about situations that are likely to happen if something else is followed. Okay, I'll repeat again. So just for example, let's just say, if I study hard, I will pass the exam. Now, this is not universally accepted as true, right? Why not? Because you cannot guarantee my pass. Can you guarantee my pass given I study hard? You cannot guarantee it. But the probability or possibility of my passing the exam is very high if I study hard, right? So this is not universally accepted as a true fact, unlike the water boiling at 100 degrees. So definitely, if you boil water at 100 degrees, it's boiled. It gets boiled. The water boils at 100 degrees, right? Or say, for example, what other examples did we have for zero conditional sentences? Yeah, if you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. Now take a look at this. If you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. So definitely, if you stop brushing your teeth, right? If you don't brush your teeth twice a day or even once a day, and you continue to do so, and you don't brush your teeth for a week, definitely your dental health is not going to be good, right? Your dental health will deteriorate, and you will get cavities, and that is a certainty that will definitely happen, right? Okay, but on the other hand, there are certain things that you want to do, and if you do, you expect a certain consequence, you expect a certain result. Now, the possibility of that result is very high. So we go with will in that particular case, but the consequence is not guaranteed. So she's in here. If you set your mind to a goal, you will eventually achieve it. You will eventually achieve it. If you set your mind to a goal, you will eventually achieve it. So what does this sentence say, or what idea is this sentence trying to portray here? So if we really want something, we must work hard for it. And if we do, we will eventually achieve it. But is that achieving guaranteed? No, it's not. But the probability is very high. The likeliness of achieving what we are wanting to achieve is very high, right? So this is a sentence or situation which must be expressed using the first conditional. And how do we use the first conditional? The if clause is kept in the simple present tense, such as if I study hard. I study hard. It's in the simple present tense. So if I study hard, I will pass the exam. Now follow this. The main clause of this sentence, which is I will pass the exam, the probability, the likeliness, or the consequence that I'm expecting is expressed in the simple future tense. So if I study hard, I will pass the exam. I hope you're clear. Okay. We've got some more questions here from Ms. Baldin Ahmed asking, but sir, I know that zero condition is only used for eternal truth. Yes, of course. The zero conditional is used for eternal truths or universal truths, yes. But aside from eternal truths, or besides eternal truths, there are more facts that are universally or that are always that are commonly known to everyone, right? So if there are such situations which are commonly known to everyone, or commonly known to at least you and the person that you're talking to, you could possibly employ the zero conditional to talk about it. Such as, for example, the example we were discussing here by Faisal Bari, that Robert usually walks to school if he has enough time. You see? So if he has enough time, or if Robert has enough time, he usually walks to school. So then again, this is a known fact. This is something that Robert does. This is not just a possibility or probability that you expect. This is something that happens. If Robert has enough time, he walks to school. So both the clauses are kept in the simple present tense, portraying the use of the zero conditional. Okay? All right. And then what was your second question here? Oh, yeah, I've just explained it. Okay. Now, so I hope all of you are clear with the use of the first conditional. So we use the first conditional to talk about a situation where if we follow a certain action, we expect a consequence, and the likeliness of that consequence is quite high. So the if clause is kept or is expressed in the simple present tense, and the consequence or the main clause is expressed in the simple future tense. Okay. Now, how to use the second conditional sentences. Very interesting. Second conditional sentences are useful for expressing outcomes that are completely unrealistic or will not likely happen in the future. I'll repeat this again. Second conditional sentences are useful for expressing outcomes that are completely unrealistic or will not likely happen in the future. Consider the examples below. If I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. If I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. If I owned a zoo, I might let people interact with the animals more. If I owned a zoo, I might let people interact with the animals more. Notice the correct way to structure second conditional sentences is to use a simple past tense in the if clause and an auxiliary modal verb such as could, should, would, might in the main clause, the one that expresses the unrealistic or unlikely outcome. Have you understood anything? Let's put our comprehension to test. So, when do we use the second conditional? We use the second conditional when we want to talk about a situation that is impossible to happen, that is never going to happen, or something that is just extremely unlikely to happen, right? Such as, for example, take a look at the first example here. If I inherited $1 billion. Now, the likeliness or the probability of you inheriting $1 billion is none. Or you could say there is no possibility as such, but you want to talk about it anyway. So you say, if I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. So you want to talk about something that you would do if you had something, or if you were something. So if I were a billionaire, I would contribute a lot to the society. So you see, for such situation, for such hypothetical or theoretical scenarios that you just want to talk about, we employ the zero conditional and we employ the second conditional. Now, employing the second conditional means having the if clause in the simple past tense, such as I inherited, right? So the verb inherit is in its past form, inherited. So if I inherited $1 billion, and the main clause, which is or the clause that talks about the consequence, the expected consequence, which is I would travel to the moon, right? So this main clause is spoken of with a modal verb, with a modal auxiliary verb or a modal helping verb, followed by the main verb of the consequence that you expect to that you think would happen if had you done something else. So if I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. Never say I will, because saying will actually completely destroys your idea here, because you are not going to do so. You would do so if you had $1 billion. Now you don't have $1 billion, and you are not traveling to the moon. Since you don't have $1 billion, you are not traveling to the moon. You will not travel to the moon. But if you had $1 billion, if you inherited $1 billion, only then would you go to the moon. You follow? So we're using the verb, the modal verb would here to express an idea that we would do, but we are not doing because we don't have something that that would be followed by our going to the moon. Am I clear enough? I hope. Now, if I owned a zoo, I might let people interact with the animals more. If I owned a zoo, I might let people interact with the animals more. Now, you don't own a zoo, and you're owning a zoo. The probability or the possibility of your owning a zoo is none, because you will not buy a zoo in the future. You don't really want to. But only you're just discussing it, that if I owned a zoo, only if I owned a zoo, I might let people interact with the animals more. You see, here again, we are using another modal auxiliary verb or another modal helping verb right before the main verb. The main verb here is let, and the modal auxiliary verb here is might. Okay. However, you could actually change this or replace this modal verb might with another modal verb. You could use would as, in this case as well. So you could say, if I owned a zoo, I would let people interact with the animals more. Similarly, you could also replace the modal verb would in the first example and put might over there in place of would, and you could say, if I inherited $1 billion, I might travel to the moon. If I inherited $1 billion, I might travel to the moon. You follow? Okay. There's more on second conditionals. Okay. Now, let's study this slide. The following sentences illustrate a couple of the common mistakes people make a couple of common mistakes people make when using the second conditional, such as, if I inherit $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. This is incorrect. What is the correct? Okay, I'm really sorry. We had some power issue here, which is why I was put off. Anyway, I'm back now, and I hope all of you can see me. If you can't see me, do please, someone please kindly let me know if I'm visible to all of you. Okay. Now getting back to conditionals. Just a moment. I'm sharing my screen with you. Share. Okay, we have Faisal Bari has a comment. Thank you for correcting my punctuation for my query. I have another question. Can we use commands and conditionals like, if you go to the office, please mail me the file? Definitely, definitely. This is not a command, however. If you're asking someone to do something for you, and this is not a command, this is just a request. So if you want to make a request, you can make a request, and you have already employed conditionals correctly here. Okay, so can we use commands and conditionals like, if you go to the office, please email me the file? Definitely yes, and you have already used it correctly. So you see in here as well, you've used the conditionals correctly. And if you go to the office, please email me the file. Although here, there is a technicality. You see, you could say that we're using the zero conditional here, right? But where is the true fact here? Well, the true fact is not, it is not like it is not like a universal truth, such as if you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. It's not like that. But then again, the outcome or the entire idea of it is quite understandable. That you're talking about something that you would like, that you expect to happen. So if I say, if you see him, please tell him to meet me. So here in both these clauses, we have the use of the simple present tense. If you see him, so you see him, tell him to meet me. If you see him, please tell him to meet me. Zero conditionals are being used, or the zero conditional is used in this particular sentence in both the clauses or in the sentence, right? So yes, this is fine. Although this is not like a universal truth, but then again, here to make such requests, we are using the zero conditional because the expectation or the outcome of the request is something that you expect to happen anyway, and there is nothing false about it. So let's just say the zero conditional is used for such requests, and they're fine. Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you for letting me know that everything's fine and that you can see me. Thank you. Thank you once again. Okay, I think Ninzamoni is asking me to explain him the second conditional again. If you don't mind, Ninzamoni, could I please kindly ask you if you are a male or a female, because it's really difficult to understand from your name. It's difficult to determine your gender. And I also think this isn't your actual name. Although you don't have to tell us your actual name, just let me know if you're a male or a female. That way I can actually use the proper pronoun for you. Okay, so you're asking me to explain you the second conditional once again. All right, sure. So what do we have here? I'll reread it from the very beginning. Second conditional sentences are useful for expressing outcomes that are completely unrealistic or will not likely happen in the future. Consider the examples below. If I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. If I owned a zoo, I might let people interact with the animals more. Notice the correct way to structure second conditional sentences is to use the simple past tense in the if clause and an auxiliary modal verb. Oh, okay, Ninzamoni has answered that she is a female. All right. I'm really sorry if I have offended you in any way. I really have not meant anything like that, okay? I just wanted to know your gender. That's because I couldn't determine it because somehow I really didn't understand it from your name. So once again, really sorry if you have been offended in any way. That was never my intention. All right. You are definitely a very dedicated viewer because I see you present in all our sessions, and alhamdulillah, I'm so happy to have you here. And I hope I'm able to, or I have been able to help you learn English, at least some, if not much. Okay, now getting back to our lesson here. The second conditional, how to use the second conditional sentences. Second conditional sentences are useful for expressing outcomes that are completely unrealistic or will not likely happen in the future. Consider the examples below. If I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. If I owned a zoo, I might let people interact with the animals more. So we use the second conditional to talk about situations where we expect an outcome, okay? We expect an outcome, and the possibility or the probability of that outcome is quite certain. We know that something will happen if a course of action is followed, such as if I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. If I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. If I owned a zoo, I might let people interact with the animals more. Now, in both these sentences, you can see that, sorry, I think I have actually explained it incorrectly. We are talking about the second conditional here. Yes. So we use the second conditional to talk about situations that can never be true. Okay? Situations that can never be true, such as, for example, some conditional sentences sentences that express an unrealistic idea. Okay? Such as, if you say that if I inherited $1 billion, now the possibility or the probability of you inheriting $1 billion is none. You see, well, you may grow up to be a billionaire. That may happen, but inheriting $1 billion is an impossibility for you. So since that's not happening, this part of this sentence or this particular clause must be expressed in the past tense, in the simple past tense. Now, you want to say or you want to discuss something that you would do had you been or had you inherited $1 billion, right? So we only talk about, or we employ the second conditional to talk about such situations or imaginary or hypothetical situations where we say that if I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. You're not inheriting $1 billion and you are not traveling to the moon, but only if you did inherit $1 billion, only then would you do something. Okay? I hope this is clear. All right. And finally, now we have some more on how to use second conditional sentences. The following sentences illustrate a couple of common mistakes people make when using the second conditional. If I inherit $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. This is incorrect. Why? Because we haven't kept the if clause in the simple past tense, which we have to. If I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. Now, this is correct. Explanation. When applying the second conditional, use the simple past tense in the if clause. When applying the second conditional, use the simple past tense in the if clause. If I owned a zoo, I will let people interact with the animals more. Correct. If I owned a zoo, I might let people interact with the animals more. Explanation. Use a modal auxiliary verb in the main clause when using the second conditional mood to express the unlikelihood that the result will actually happen. So to actually portray a sentence using the second conditional, you have to make sure that the if clause of that sentence is in the simple past tense and the main clause of the sentence is portrayed with the help of a modal auxiliary verb followed by the main verb, which is would travel or might let. Okay? All right. Now, the last and not the least, we have the third conditional. And now we're going to see how to use third conditional sentences. All right, we have a remark here from Ninja Moninja. She's saying that, I thank you so much, sir, for your nice compliment. Pray for me. I'm highly interested to join Augmatics. Oh, we would love you to have here. Yes, I think you're doing all the right things to actually join us. Are you following our recruitment sessions or our info sessions that we are hosting every weekend? I think we have more information going, or we actually talk a lot about getting into Augmatics during those sessions. And do follow those sessions so you can actually know how exactly to apply in our company, in our organization. Okay? All right. We have a query here from Misbah saying, in school, we studied the examples of second conditionals like, if I were rich, I would travel to the moon. Is that correct? Definitely. Of course. It's because, you see, if I inherited $1 billion and if I were rich, both convey the same idea. And both these if clauses are in the simple past tense, are they not? If I inherited $1 billion, so I inherited. Now, inherited is the past form of the verb inherit, and so is the verb were. Were is the past tense of are. Now, why were and not was, that's another discussion. I think I discussed it some other day, right? Okay, but we know that we go with the verb were when we talk about such situations where we are basically talking about a hypothetical situation, such as, for example, if I say, if I were in your position, I would do it differently. Now, I can actually never be in your position. That is an impossibility, right? That's just impossible for me to be you. So we cannot say if I was you, or such situations are expressed in this very way where we actually go with the verb were and not was. So we say, if I were you, or if I were rich, if I were that, if I were this, I would do this, I would do that. So if I were rich, I would travel to the moon. If I inherited $1 billion, I would travel to the moon. You're right, and so am I, and I'm sure both of us are on the same page and we acknowledge it as well. Okay. Now, third conditional sentences. So when exactly do we employ the third conditional? When do we exactly employ the third conditional? Third conditional sentences are used to explain that present circumstances would be different if something different had happened in the past. I'll repeat this again for you. The third conditional is employed to talk about circumstances that would be different had something different happened in the past. Look at the following examples. If you had told me you needed a ride, I would have left earlier. If you had told me you needed a ride, I would have left earlier. If I had cleared the house, I could have gone to the movies. All right. I'll just take a minute from you. Okay. All right. So as I was saying, so you see, now we want to talk about a situation that has not happened. Okay? So you are talking about a consequence, or you want to talk about a consequence that would have happened had you done something differently, or had something been done differently in the past. Okay? Take a look at these examples here. If you had told me you needed a ride, I would have left earlier. Now, I didn't leave earlier. I didn't leave early, or I didn't leave earlier. And you did not ask me for help. And you did not ask me for a ride. So the consequence of me leaving earlier didn't happen because you hadn't asked me to leave early. You see? But the situation could have been different. The situation could have been different had you asked me, or had you told me that you needed a ride. Are we on the same page on this? Let's read the last paragraph on the slide here. These sentences express a condition that was likely enough, but did not actually happen in the past. The speaker in the first sentence was capable of leaving early, but did not. Along these same lines, the speaker in the second sentence was capable of cleaning the house, but did not. These are all conditions that were likely, but regrettably did not happen. Take a look at the second example here. If I had cleaned the house, I could have gone to the movies. Now, this example is actually easier to understand. If I had cleaned the house, I could have gone to the movies. Now, did I go to the movies? Could I go to the movies? No. The reality is that I could not, I did not. Why did I not? Because I did not clean the house. Okay, so maybe I was supposed to clean the house first, and maybe then I was supposed to go to the movies. So I didn't clean the house, and I couldn't go to the movies. Now, you want to talk about a situation, or you want to talk about a different possibility that could have happened, but didn't happen. So how do you talk about such different possibilities that actually never took place? To talk about such possibilities or such situations that could have happened, you use deferred conditional. So you say, if I had cleaned the house, I could have gone to the movies. Meaning if I did my work, or if I had done my work, I would have been able to do something else. Or I would have been able to do something that I would do, or I would have done had I been able to do, or had I done something else before. I know too many had and too many woulds here, but I hope we are all together on this. So we use the third conditional to talk about situations that would have happened had we done something else. Okay? So just for example, let's just say, I would have been a doctor had I studied medicine. Follow this. I would have been a doctor had I studied medicine. Now, am I a doctor? I'm not a doctor. Why am I not a doctor? Because I didn't study medicine, right? So the reality is that I am not a doctor, but I want to talk about the scenario where I am a doctor, or I want to talk about the possibility that is not true or that has not come true, right? But the possibility where I could be a doctor. So I'm saying I would be a doctor, or I would have been a doctor had I studied medicine. And maybe I had the chance to study medicine. but I did not. I did not go for it, right? Maybe there was an offer letter from a medical school, but I did not accept the offer letter. So I'm talking about it now. I had this opportunity in the past. This situation is not like the situations where we use the second conditional, right? Because we use second conditional for situations that were never possible, okay? But we use the third conditional to talk about situations that would have happened had we acted differently. We had options, we had chances, but we did not take those options. We did not take those chances. So imagine I was offered a position to study at a medical school, but I did not go for it. And since I did not go for it, I am not a doctor now. So I want to talk about it. So I say I would have been a doctor, or had I studied medicine, I would have been a doctor. Had I studied medicine, I would have been a doctor. Okay? So how to construct these sentences where we use the deferred conditional? The if clause is in the past perfect tense. The if clause is in the past perfect tense, such as, if I had cleaned the house. You see? So we know how we construct past perfect sentences, where we have the auxiliary verb had immediately followed by the past participle of the main verb, which in this case is done, or cleaned. Okay? So if I had cleaned the house. The if clause is in the past perfect tense. And the main clause is where we go with a modal verb, could or would, right? Or might, followed by have. It's always have right after the modal verb. And then the main verb of the clause, which is gone. Also, this main verb has to be in the past participle. So if I had cleaned the house, I could have gone to the movies, or I would have gone to the movies had I cleaned the house. Or if you had told me you needed a ride, I would have left earlier. So here as well, the if clause is in the past perfect tense. If you had told me that you needed a ride, I would have left earlier. The main clause, in the main clause, we have the modal verb would, followed by have, and then we have the past participle of the main verb of this clause, which is leave, and the past participle of leave is left. Okay? So if you had told me you needed a ride, I would have left earlier. If I had cleaned the house, I could have gone to the movies. Okay? All right. So Dirana says, why for a third condition take a have after modals? Well, that is exactly how we are supposed to construct it. There is no particular reason to this, but this is exactly how we construct sentences using the third conditional. When you want to talk about situations that would have happened had you done things differently. Okay? All right, Ninzamoni here is saying that, is there anything remarkable, words or phrases that indicate individually which conditional the sentence is? I really haven't understood your query here, but I think I can get near to what point you're trying to make. You're basically asking whether if there are any words, any specific words that might indicate which conditional to go for, right? No, there isn't any, or there aren't any such words or phrases. You just have to understand the context of your. Wait, sorry, I have another query here from Sultan Al Arafat asking, please explain the conditional that starts with had. Tasnim Bushra says, Assalamu alaikum, sir, can you explain the example that you give? Which example again? You need to be a little more specific about it, please. As you're coming back to Ninzamuni's query here, that are there any specific words or phrases that could help us indicate which conditional to go for? No, there aren't any such words or phrases that could possibly indicate which conditional to go for. We actually use the conditionals, or we adapt, or we learn to use the conditionals by practicing them as much as we can, okay? You just need to remember the rules, okay? So for example, if you talk about a general truth, if you want to talk about a general truth, you use the zero conditional, such as maybe you're warning a sibling of yours, a younger sibling of yours, and you're actually warning that sibling of yours that if you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. You see? if you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. So in this situation, you're talking about a general truth. Now, when you're talking about general truths, you keep both the clauses in your sentence in the simple present tense. Now, the if clause, also the main clause. So if you don't brush your teeth, so you don't brush your teeth is what? In which tense? It's in the simple present tense. And so is you get cavities. You get cavities. This part you get is also, this clause is also in the simple present tense. Now, you want to talk about an outcome that is very likely to happen if you do something, if you follow a course of action. So again, this time, you are talking to a sister, a younger sister, or a younger brother of yours, and you're advising that younger sibling of yours. So you're asking him, or you're telling that person that if you don't study hard, you will fail this exam. If you don't work hard, you will not be successful. Follow this. So the if clause is where you're actually telling the person that following course of action is a good idea to gain something. To gain something, right? So if you study hard, you will pass the exam. The consequence, the outcome of studying hard is passing the exam. And the outcome, this particular outcome of passing the exam is a very likely possibility, is an outcome with a great probability that it is quite certain that it will happen if you study hard. You see? So here you use the first conditional to talk about a situation or to talk about an outcome that is very likely to happen if you follow a particular course of action. Okay? Now, when do we use the second conditional? We use the second conditional to talk about, actually I'll enlarge my own screen because I'm not following any slides. Okay, so when do you use the second conditional? You use the second conditional to talk about situations which are impossible, situations which will never be true. So this time again, you're talking to a sibling of yours, a younger sibling of yours, and you're actually warning that person. You care for your siblings, so you're warning your sibling and you're asking him, or you're telling him or her that if I were in your position, I would work harder. You get it? If I were in your position, I would work harder. But I can never be in your position. I can never be in your position because I will always be in my position and you will be always in your position. But only if I were in your position. Here, this if clause is actually talking about a situation that is just impossible, that will never happen, right? So only if I were in your position, what expectation or what outcome would follow? I would study harder or I would work harder. Okay, so if I were a billionaire, I would go to the moon. Or if I inherited $1 billion, I would donate a lot to the poor. But I'm not going to donate to the poor because I'm not a billionaire, because I am not going to inherit $1 billion. That is just an impossibility. Okay, now what about the third conditional? When do we use the third conditionals? Or sorry, when do we use the third conditional? We use the third conditional to talk about past situations. And now we're talking about them in a regrettable way, maybe. But your expressions don't have to be regretful always. But mostly people talk about, or people use the third conditional to express regret, or to express regret regarding an action of the past. So probably, let's just say, you're talking about a friend of yours, or you're talking to a friend of yours, right? Now, maybe your friend needed some help, but you couldn't help him because you didn't know that he needed help. So now you're saying this to your friend. Now that crisis is over, maybe that crisis is over, and that crisis, of course, took place in the past. You guys are now in the present, and now you're talking. Both of you are talking. So you're saying to the friend of yours that, had you told me, I would have definitely helped you. Had you told me that you needed money, I would have definitely helped you. Or if you had told me that you needed money, I would have definitely helped you. You follow? So here as well, we've got two clauses, the if clause and the main clause. The if clause is kept in the past perfect tense. So if you had told me that you needed money, if you had told me. So you have, right after if, you have had, and followed by had, you have the past participle of the verb, which is told, which is the past participle of tell. So if you had told me, and then comes the main clause, I would have helped you. So to construct the main clause, using the third conditional, you, right after your subject, you come up with a modal verb, which in most cases would. Or you could use other modal verbs as well. So would followed by have. Now have is a permanent. You always have to put have right after the modal verb given you're talking about a sentence or you're using the verb conditional in a sentence. So would have and immediately followed by have. Immediately following the word have, the verb have is the main verb of the clause. And this main verb has to be in the past perfect tense. Sorry, not the past perfect tense. You have to go with the past participle of this main verb. So if you had told me that you needed money, I would have helped you. Now, helped is the past participle of help. So, helped you. Okay? All right? Am I clear enough? Dustin Busher says, I would be a doctor had I studied medicine. Yeah, this is fine. This is just fine. There are many overlapping scenarios, but to be exactly fine, let's just say, had I studied medicine, I would have been a doctor. Instead of I would be a doctor, let's just say, had I studied medicine, I would have been a doctor. Or to make it even better, let's say, if I had studied medicine, I would have been a doctor today. Okay? Now, you're talking about this. You're saying this only because you had a chance to become a doctor, or you had a chance to study medicine in the past. And this chance is not an imaginary chance. It really did come to you in the past. When you were deciding which profession to go or which discipline of study to go for, you did have this chance where you could actually study medicine, but you chose not to. Maybe you went for engineering. Maybe you went for teaching. Maybe you went for business administration or any other subject, but you didn't go for medicine. Now, maybe after a few years, you're just talking about it. Maybe you don't regret, or maybe you do. Maybe now you regret that you could have been a doctor, that you could become a doctor, but you didn't, of course. Why not? Because you didn't study medicine. So how exactly do you portray this, or how exactly do you say this? You say, if I had studied medicine, I would have been a doctor today, or I could have been a doctor today. Okay? All right. So this is it for today. I know conditionals are tricky. They trick me all the time. We don't really understand most of the time how to really construct our sentences using the conditionals we have, but they are not unconquerable. They are definitely conquerable, and we do conquer them, and we can use them perfectly. All we need to do is practice. That's it. So the more you practice, the better you get at them. Okay? You can actually go through my slides again and read them. And you could be looking up conditionals on Google. Especially, I would suggest you look up conditionals on Grammarly. Grammarly is a website. I talked about it in one of my previous sessions. And you can definitely look into Grammarly, and they have a very helpful blog on conditionals. Go read the blogs if you like, and I'm sure if you do, you will learn more about the use of conditionals. Okay? So this is it for today. We've had a very confusing session today. I'm sure. I know this wasn't easy, and anyway, this is the best maybe I could have done today. Anyway, so see all of you tomorrow again, inshallah. Tomorrow, if I'm not wrong, I think we will be covering the active voice or the active passive constructions. Okay, the active passive voice. So don't miss out tomorrow's session. We will be seeing each other again tomorrow, inshallah. Until then, everyone, please take good care of yourselves and stay hygiene, maintain your hygiene. Allah Hafiz.